Picture this. You're standing in the middle of this massive, I mean, truly awe-inspiring sacred city in ancient pre-Columbian Mexico.
Which is centuries before any European ship even gets close to the continent.
Right, exactly. So around you, there are these monumental stone temples rising up above the arid landscape. And they're built entirely for gods, for ceremony, for the powerful elite.
Yeah, the sheer scale of these places was designed to make you feel incredibly small.
Completely. And you've got priests moving quietly through these grand, sweeping courtyards. Their footsteps are measured. The whole vibe is incredibly solemn. The air is thick with incense. And right there, just trotting alongside them with this outsized, almost comical level of confidence, is a tiny dog.
It's such a wild visual contrast, isn't it?
It really is. We're talking about an animal small enough to be tucked under a single arm or like literally disappear into the folds of a heavy ceremonial robe. And yet there it is, navigating the temple steps like it owns the place.
Yeah, just totally unfazed by the monumental stone empires all around it.
So today on the Deep Dive, we are taking a stack of really fascinating sources. We've got historical deep dives into Mesoamerican cultures, archaeological findings, and breed-specific biological research notes.
There is a surprising amount of complex biology hiding in these sources.
Oh, for sure. Our mission today is to uncover the epic history and that surprising biology inside the world's most famous handbag dog. Obviously, we're talking about the Chihuahua.
A breed that, frankly, has a lot of unfair stereotypes attached to it.
Definitely. If you have ever glanced at one of these tiny dogs shivering in a tote bag and just assumed you understood everything about them, our goal today is to completely change your perspective.
Because the real story of how they engineered their own survival is just incredible.
Okay, let's unpack this. To understand how a dog this small fits into the grandeur of ancient Mexico, we have to look at the archaeological record. And the sources point to an ancient ancestor called the Tichichi, right?
Yeah, the Tachichi. And this was a small, heavy-boned companion dog kept by indigenous civilizations across central Mexico. And this is long before the modern Chihuahua ever emerged.
So we're talking pretty far back then.
Very far back. What is crucial to understand here is the timeline. We are looking at a lineage that predates the mighty Aztec Empire. It goes all the way back to the Toltecs, who dominated that region around, 1,000 years ago.
Wow, 1,000 years. How do we actually know that for sure?
Well, archaeologists have discovered dog remains that were carefully buried alongside humans in these ancient grave sites. Plus, they found all these effigies like small clay statues of these dogs just scattered throughout the ruins of places like Tula.
Tula was the ancient Toltec capital, right?
Exactly. It was their major hub.
And reading through these archaeological notes, it's clear that Tichichi wasn't just some stray scavenging for scraps on the edge of the village. The careful nature of these burials, it suggests they held like a really deep spiritual significance.
Oh, absolutely. They were entirely woven into the spiritual fabric of the society. In a lot of Mesoamerican cultures, dogs were believed to be spiritual guides.
Like guides for the afterlife.
Right. The prevailing belief was that the afterlife was this treacherous, multi-leveled underworld, and a human soul basically couldn't navigate it alone.
I mean, that sounds terrifying.
It was. So the Tachichi was revered because it was thought to act as a crucial guide, leading its owner's soul safely through the darkness. So the Chihuahua's relationship with humans, it isn't some modern novelty, right? It's not a fad invented by early 2000s celebrity culture.
Right, like the dogs in designer bags on red carpet.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It is actually one of the oldest, most continuous companion dog relationships in the Americas.
Which honestly makes their survival story incredible.
Yeah.
Because the cultural upheaval in this region was just absolute.
Oh, it was a constant cycle of rise and fall.
Yeah, you had the Toltec civilization peaking and then collapsing. Then a couple of centuries later, the massive Aztec Empire rises up, completely dominating central Mexico, absorbing old traditions, enforcing new ones.
And then, of course, the 16th century happens.
Right, the Spanish arrive, they bring colonial conquest, war, and these entirely new belief systems that actively tried to eradicate indigenous religions.
What's fascinating here is how these small dogs survived those earth-shattering generational shifts. When the Spanish conquered the Aztecs, they dismantled the temples, they outlawed the old religious practices.
So the Tichichi essentially lost its job as a sacred ceremonial guide to the underworld.
Exactly. It lost its primary spiritual function, yet the lineage didn't go extinct. They adapted. They survived the fall of Tula, the collapse of Tenochtitlan, and that brutal colonial period simply by remaining deeply valued companions to the people enduring those horrific changes.
That is so wild. They just offered comfort when literally everything else was falling apart.
Yeah, they stayed close to their people.
And then they kind of stayed largely under the global radar for centuries until American visitors traveling through the region in the mid-19th century started noticing them.
Right, the tourists started paying attention.
Yeah. They found these little dogs thriving in the sprawling northern Mexican state of Chihuahua, brought a few back to the U.S., and, well, that's how they ended up with their modern name and eventual international recognition.
And the modern breed standard took shape pretty rapidly after that. As they gained popularity globally, breeders began to categorize them by the two distinct varieties we see today.
Which are the smooth coat and the long coat, right?
Yeah. The smooth coat has that short, sleek fur, and the long coat features soft, flowing fur, particularly around the ears, the legs, and the tail.
Now, reading about these two coat types makes me wonder about their physiology. Because, if I have an espresso shot in a tiny paper cup, it goes cold on the kitchen counter in about 2 minutes.
That is a very apt comparison.
Right. What if I have a massive thermal jug of coffee? It stays hot all day. So I'm assuming that Chihuahua's intense need for warmth, like you always see them burrowing under laundry or baking in a single square of sunlight on the floor, has to do with that same principle of heat loss, and not just which coat they happen to be wearing.
The espresso cup analogy is spot on. It all comes down to the physics of their surface area to mass ratio.
Could break that down for us.
Well, it really doesn't matter if you were looking at a long-coated or smooth-coated Chihuahua. Underneath the fur, they possess the exact same ancient, delicate frame. A smaller body has a remarkably large surface area, meaning exposed skin, relative to its overall internal heat-generating mass.
Oh, I see. So they have very little internal volume to actually generate the heat,
Yeah.
but a massive amount of surface area that's constantly radiating whatever heat they do make out into the environment.
Exactly. They are thermodynamic nightmares, biologically speaking.
Thermodynamic nightmares. I love that.
It's true. A Chihuahua experiences rapid heat loss at room temperatures that would feel perfectly comfortable to us or, to a larger dog like a golden retriever. They naturally feel the cold much faster and much more intensely.
Which totally explains the blanket burrowing.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you see a Chihuahua burrowing into a pile of blankets, they are not being quirky, pampered divas. I mean, they are executing a basic biological imperative. They are artificially insulating themselves to regulate their core temperature because their anatomy simply cannot do it efficiently on its own.
So if their bodies are working overtime just to exist at standard room temperature, it's pretty obvious they weren't built to, pull carts, plow fields, or retrieve waterfowl from freezing lakes.
No, definitely not retrieving anything from a freezing lake.
Right. So the sources classify them strictly as a companion breed, but I want to dig into what that actually means from an evolutionary standpoint, because that's a job too, isn't it?
It is a very specific job. It means their job was you.
Me. Just being a companion.
Exactly. Unlike a husky that was bred for endurance running, or, say, a border collie bred to track and herd movement across a valley, the Chihuahua's singular evolutionary purpose was near constant physical proximity and intense emotional attunement to human beings.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, breeders over centuries basically selected for dogs that paid the absolute closest attention to human faces, human moods, and human movements.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because if you are listening to this and you have a Chihuahua that absolutely insists on following you from the kitchen to the living room to the bathroom and just stares at you with this intense, unwavering devotion, it is so easy to label that as neediness.
People do it all the time. They call them clingy.
Right, clingy. But based on these notes, that isn't a personality flaw. That is the direct expression of centuries of selective breeding playing out right there on your living room rug.
You are quite literally watching historical programming run its course. They were never selected to work independently or, solve problems away from their handler.
Like a terrier hunting rats in a barn.
Right. They were selected to bond closely, to stay physically near, and to continuously read your emotional state. So when they follow you from room to room, they are essentially clocking in for their shift.
I buy that.
Yeah.
I really do. But I have to push back a little here based on the behavioral notes in our sources.
Okay, let's hear it.
If they were bred strictly to be our little attuned emotional shadows, why on earth do they act so tough?
Ah, the bravado.
Yeah. We have all seen it. A dog the size of a shoe, standing its ground, puffing out its chest, and just barking furiously at, A Mastiff, that doesn't scream a Toon Shadow. It screams colossal ego.
It is a phenomenal paradox, honestly. It's often referred to as the big dog complex. The historical sources note that this breed possesses a naturally highly strong-willed temperament.
Strong-willed is one way to put it.
Well, you have to remember, they were bred to be engaging, present companions, and that requires a certain level of boldness and personality. But mechanically, they seem to lack an awareness of their own physical vulnerability.
Wait, really? They literally don't compute their own size relative to a massive threat.
The behavioral patterns heavily suggest they do not see themselves as small. They frequently behave as though their physical size warrants absolutely no caution in the world.
That is both hilarious and slightly terrifying for their safety.
It is. But the parking you mentioned, that intense vocalization, it deserves proper historical context. Throughout their history, a dog of this size was never going to serve as a physical guardian.
Obviously not. They're tiny.
Right, they couldn't take down an intruder in an ancient village, but what they could do is provide an incredibly effective acoustic perimeter.
Oh, I see. They were the ancient world's burglar alarms. Their job wasn't to fight the threat. Their job was to enthusiastically announce it.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, that alert, communicative tendency became deeply embedded in their DNA. Watchfulness was a highly valuable utility. A small, attentive dog that notices every change in the environment and signals the household, that's providing a real service.
Think about how completely that changes how you should view a barking Chihuahua.
It really shifts the perspective.
Yeah, the next time your dog goes absolutely ballistic because the delivery driver dropped a package on the porch, you don't have to just see a noisy nuisance. You can look at them and realize they are just being a tiny, ancient alarm system, keeping your modern temple safe. They're literally doing exactly what they were engineered to do.
It is a vital mindset shift for any owner. Misunderstanding these deeply historical traits, like their natural boldness and their ingrained watchfulness, leads directly to the most unfair, damaging stereotypes about the breed today.
Like people thinking they're just mean.
Right. When we misinterpret their history, we mismanage their care.
So what does this all mean for their day-to-day lives? How do we take this understanding of their watchfulness and their physical vulnerability and translate it into proper care?
We have to start by clearing up the biggest myth.
Yeah, the stereotype we have to dismantle is the idea that Chihuahuas are just naturally aggressive, nasty little biters.
The research is unequivocal on this point. Chihuahuas are not naturally aggressive. What people are almost always labeling as aggression in this breed is, in reality, fear-based reactivity.
Let's look at the psychology of that. A confident dog investigates a threat, but a reactive dog lashes out because it feels trapped or overwhelmed.
Exactly. And that reactivity almost always stems from two preventable issues: inadequate early socialization or a history of rough, unpredictable handling.
Which happens a lot with small dogs.
Way too often. When a Chihuahua puppy isn't positively exposed to a variety of people, sounds, and environments, their natural boldness curdles into wariness.
And then you combine that wariness with the fact that they are physically tiny.
Right. You get a dog that bites because its brain is telling it that lashing out is literally the only way to survive an encounter.
I think about it like this. Imagine you are the size of a loaf of bread, right?
Okay, I'm a loaf of bread.
You live in a world where giant creatures, 10 times your mass, constantly swoop down from the sky, pick you up without warning, squeeze you, and move you around. It would be terrifying. You'd become highly reactive, too, if you were constantly grabbed by giant, unpredictable claws.
It is a completely reasonable defensive response from a physically delicate animal. It's not a temperamental flaw at all. And this is exactly why supervision with young children is absolutely vital.
Because kids can be unpredictable.
Yes. A child reaching out suddenly to grab them looks like a predator swooping in. Households with young kids must teach gentle, predictable interaction and provide the exact same careful supervision they would for any small, delicate pet.
This also perfectly dismantles the handbag dog myth we talked about earlier. Framing them as just a passive accessory to be carried around all day completely ignores their intelligence and their need for agency.
They need to be dogs.
Right. They need real, positive training to build confidence, and they need physical exercise where their feet are actually on the ground, sniffing and engaging with the world.
They are real dogs, and they require real mental stimulation. But because of their extreme miniaturization, the medical sources highlight several physiological realities that owners absolutely must manage.
Right, because you can't just treat them like a shrunken-down Labrador. Their anatomy functions differently at that scale.
Exactly. The sources outline a few specific areas, starting with dental disease, which seems to plague almost every small breed.
Yeah, it's incredibly common. Why is that?
It is a matter of simple geometry. A Chihuahua has the exact same number of adult teeth as a Great Dane, which is 42 teeth, but they are crammed into a jaw that is only a couple inches long.
Oh, wow. 42 teeth in that tiny mouth.
Right. This severe crowding creates deep pockets and traps for food, and that leads to rapid plaque buildup and periodontal disease if they don't get regular dental care.
That makes total sense. And the structural issues go beyond the jaw, too. The notes mention a high prevalence of luxating patellas. If I'm reading the mechanics of this correctly, it's essentially the kneecap slipping out of its joint.
Yes, exactly. In breeding for extremely thin, delicate legs, the geometry of the hind legs is altered. The femoral groove, which is the trench in the thigh bone where the kneecap is supposed to slide up and down, often fails to develop enough depth.
So it's too shallow.
Yeah, because the groove is too shallow, the kneecap literally pops out of place, causing them to suddenly skip or limp while they're walking.
I've seen small dogs do that little skip.
Yeah.
And then there is the tracheal issue. The sources note they are highly prone to collapsing tracheas. I imagine this is like trying to suck a thick milkshake through a very cheap, thin paper straw. Eventually, the structural integrity just gives out and the straw flattens.
That is the exact mechanical failure happening in their throat. A dog's windpipe is held open by rings of cartilage, but in severely miniaturized dogs, those cartilage rings can be really weak and brittle.
Which sounds dangerous.
It is. Over time, or under the pressure of a tight neck collar, those rings flatten out. That narrows the airway and causes this harsh honking cough. It is a direct consequence of their miniaturized anatomy.
Which is why a well-fitted body harness is mandatory, right? Never a neck collar for a Chihuahua.
Absolutely never a neck collar.
Got it. There's one more major health flag in the sources, especially for puppies, which is hypoglycemia, a sudden, dangerous drop in blood sugar.
And this goes right back to their lack of internal mass. They simply do not have the liver capacity or the physical fat reserves to store glycogen.
So they can't fast like a bigger dog.
Right. If a tiny puppy misses even 1 or 2 meals, they cannot metabolize stored fat into glucose like a larger dog can. Their blood sugar plummets, which can lead to lethargy, seizures, or even death.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they require highly frequent small meals just to keep their engine running.
It is incredibly complex physiology. This is definitely not a set it and forget it kind of pet.
Not at all. This raises an important question, though. Why does society so often dismiss them as mere accessories or like low-maintenance decorations when the reality is that they require deeply attentive, informed care?
It's a huge disconnect.
It is. The irony is, when they do receive that proper care, they are incredibly robust. They frequently live 15 to 20 years, making them among the longest-lived of all dog breeds. They are complex, resilient animals that just happen to come in a highly miniaturized package.
It really is a massive blind spot in how modern culture views them. We look at a dog that fits in a purse, and we automatically assume fragility, simplicity, and neediness.
But the truth is so different.
It's infinitely richer. Looking at the historical journey and the biological reality we've explored on this deep dive, the Chihuahua is an ancient, highly intelligent survivor. It is purpose-built for intense loyalty.
Yes, and physiologically driven to seek warmth.
Right, because of the brutal math of its surface area to mass ratio. And above all, it is an animal deeply deserving of gentle training, respect, and real inclusion in your daily life.
They demand respect, and looking at their timeline, they have absolutely earned it. I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that really reframes everything we've discussed today.
Okay, let's hear it.
Consider the sheer scale of history these tiny dogs have witnessed. They outlasted the mighty Toltec Empire. They survived the sprawling, dominant Aztec civilization. They endured centuries of intense historical upheaval, colonial conquest, and modern industrialization.
That is a lot of history for a little dog.
It really is. We tend to look at their intense, unyielding emotional attachment to us as just a cute, sometimes annoying personality quirk. But maybe, just maybe, it was the ultimate evolutionary survival strategy.
Oh, wow.
By making themselves entirely, irrevocably indispensable to the human heart, this tiny, physically vulnerable dog ensured that its lineage would outlive entire civilizations.
They literally conquered history through companionship.
Exactly that. Something to think about the next time you're sitting on the couch and a tiny descendant of ancient Mexico demands to share your blanket.
I will definitely never look at a Chihuahua burrowing into my laundry basket the same way again.